They said aging comes with wisdom, but they didn't talk much about the mornings, about the way joints whisper before the sun even rises, about the quiet frustration of reaching for socks and wondering when such a small task became a challenge. They said to stay active, to eat right, to take care of the body. And yet, even with all the effort, some mornings it still feels like the body is no longer listening. That's what led to the first bottle, the one with shiny letters that promised relief, a little hope in a plastic jar. And so the story begins, not with a miracle, but with a simple question that many of us over 60 have quietly asked at one point or another. Why am I still hurting, even after doing everything they told me to do? It always began the same way. The cold would slip into the house at night, and by morning, the left knee would be talking again. Not with words, of course, but with that dull, stubborn ache that had become all too familiar. Sitting at the edge of the bed, holding the leg with both hands and trying to bend it gently, it never wanted to bend. It felt like the knee had its own language, one that only spoke in winter. 3 years earlier, when the ache first arrived, the most natural response had been to visit the pharmacy. The shelves were full of promises. Bottles that claimed to rebuild cartilage, soothe inflammation, and make joints feel young again. The first bottle had come from a late-night TV commercial. A man around the same age danced on the beach, smiling like he hadn't felt pain in years. That dream of moving freely again was tempting. The lighting, the music, the calm voice narrating benefits, it all worked. It made hope seem reasonable. So the pills were bought. Every morning after breakfast, 2 pills were taken with coffee. Not a single day was missed. There was even a small spot on the kitchen counter just for them. Even the neighbor, George, was told about them, and he picked up a bottle for himself. It became a kind of ritual, a shared project, as if pain had brought about a quiet sense of teamwork. The first month passed. Nothing changed. It seemed logical to wait longer. The idea was that the pills needed time to build up. That's what the girl at the store had said, with the confidence of someone who'd read the label many times. By the second month, still no difference. But the hope continued. After all, these things were supposed to work gradually. Better than nothing, someone had said. That phrase stuck like wallpaper, visible even when no one talked about it. After a year, the pain was still there. Each trip to the mailbox brought the same soreness, but stopping felt like giving up. It seemed possible that it would have been worse without the pills. That was the kind of reasoning George had offered. Maybe they were working, just not in obvious ways. The pain hadn't gotten worse after all. Or had it? Hard to tell. Pain has a way of blending into the background when it's always there. More bottles were bought. Some had extra herbs. Some claimed new breakthrough blends. Most of the ingredients were unfamiliar, but the claims were strong. The packaging was comforting. Advertisements said it worked. Friends said it worked. Even a nurse once said, "It can't hurt to try." That line had stayed in mind. It sounded harmless, reassuring, but also vague, like most things marketed to people with time and pain. But after 3 full years, the knees still hurt, especially in the winter. Then came that January morning. It was bitterly cold. While heading out for the newspaper, the leg gave out slightly on the front steps. It didn't result in a fall, but it was close. And frightening. The kind of moment that makes you sit back down and stay there longer than you meant to. During a regular checkup that week, the pills were mentioned. The doctor, a gentleman in his 50s, asked what kind of pills were being taken. The bottle was pulled from a coat pocket. It had become a habit to carry it. The doctor glanced at the label, then flipped it around, recognizing glucosamine, chondroitin, and turmeric. He quietly said that many people believed in these pills, but the truth was, there wasn't much strong proof that they helped most people. He explained that some folks felt better, but that could be because they were moving more, stretching, or simply because they believed the pills were helping. It was a quiet kind of shock. Hundreds of dollars had been spent, pills had been taken faithfully, and the pain had never left. The doctor didn't blame anyone. He simply said joints were complex. They needed movement, strong muscles, better posture, better shoes. pills could only do so much, and in many cases they might not do anything at all. That evening, the usual 2 pills were skipped. Instead, there was a cup of tea by the window and the same ache in the knee. But this time, there was also a question forming. What if the pills weren't helping at all? The question didn't have an answer yet, but it stayed in the room. The next day, the pills stayed untouched. A short walk around the block was taken instead, bundled up in a coat, with a cane for support. The cold was biting, but the sun was kind. Each step was slow, careful. The pain followed, but the movement felt different. There was no expectation, just effort. And effort had its own kind of reward. Later that day, some basic knee exercises were found on the tablet. Nothing too difficult, simple stretches, leg lifts, and slow motions while holding the back of a chair. Everything felt stiff at first. The legs shook. Breaks were needed, but doing these small things felt different than swallowing a pill. It wasn't passive. It was effort, real effort. Posture became a focus. The old cushion was swapped for one with firmer support. Crossing the legs was avoided. A rolled towel was added behind the lower back while sitting. Water replaced extra cups of coffee. A water bottle was placed beside the recliner. These weren't medical miracles. They were household adjustments. But they mattered. Slowly, something began to shift. Not in a dramatic way, but like how fog lifts gradually in the morning. It started with moments. The first time the leg stretched without wincing. The first morning rising from bed without holding the nightstand. It brought a strange kind of joy. Not loud, but warm. The kind that sits quietly in the chest. The knees still creaked in the mornings, but they didn't feel as angry after walks. The stiffness after sitting too long faded quicker. The balance felt steadier when standing. Even the stairs inside the house didn't seem so unforgiving. A small stretch before bedtime helped the legs rest more easily. There was no chart tracking progress, but the body knew. There was even a moment one afternoon, after dusting the top shelf of the pantry, when it became clear this wasn't just about knees. It was about trust. Trusting the body again. Trusting effort over shortcuts. The mailbox seemed a little closer each day. One morning, George came by with his usual bag of donuts. He looked for a moment and remarked with surprise that walking seemed easier. Rising from the chair had been smoother. There was less bracing, less gripping the armrest. George asked whether the pills had finally kicked in. He was told they had been stopped weeks ago. The new routine, light exercise, more water, small changes, was explained. George blinked and asked whether stopping the pills had really helped. The answer was honest, not cured, but better. And sometimes, better was enough. That week, Marge from the community center called. She said someone had told her there was knee yoga happening now. It wasn't yoga, not really, just slow, careful movement. But in small towns, word travels fast. Some people were curious, others were skeptical. A few asked for the name of the video being followed. Some just said, "That's good for you, but I'll stick with my pills." One woman at the senior center confided that her daughter kept buying her supplements from ads she saw online, expensive ones, and she didn't have the heart to say they weren't helping. One man quietly admitted that he had 3 half-used bottles in his cabinet, but kept taking them because his brother swore by them. There were whispers of hope and echoes of doubt. No one was pressured, no advice was given. Just a story shared, quietly, like a note passed in class, hoping someone else might find it helpful. And every so often, someone would nod a little longer, stay a little later, and say something like, "Maybe I'll try what you're doing, just to see." Like a note passed in class, hoping someone else might find it helpful. Comfort began to come from knowing something could be done, that it wasn't too late to change. Some mornings were still hard, the cold still made its visit, but now there were tools. There was movement. There was less fear. By spring, the snow was melting. The knees still creaked, but not as angrily. The pill bottle remained in the cabinet, behind some tissues and an old box of tea. A notepad kept track of how the joints felt each day, It started as a simple curiosity, just jotting down a few words like tight, not bad, or better than yesterday. But over time, it became a quiet companion, a place to witness the body's moods, like weather. Sometimes there were small drawings, a smiley face on a good day, a frowning stick figure on a rainy one. This little act of noticing became part of the morning ritual. Make coffee, feed the cat, write 2 lines in the notebook. It didn't feel like data. It felt like self-respect, like saying, I see you, body. I know you're trying. Patterns became visible. Cold days, rainy days, long sitting spells. But now, the patterns came with tools, simple ones. And with those tools came a feeling of steadiness, like standing on firmer ground. The sense of control returned, little by little, not complete but real. It wasn't about a miracle. It wasn't about becoming young again. It was about no longer feeling helpless. About learning that even in older age, change is possible. That healing isn't always about curing, but about caring. One afternoon, while sitting on the porch with a glass of water and a breeze for company, thoughts turned back to all the things that had been believed over the years. Take this and you'll feel young again. 1 pill a day keeps the pain away. If it's on the shelf, it must work. Those things had been believed once, and maybe that belief hadn't been all bad. Hope has its place, but now it was clear. Hope needs help. Not just from pills, but from action, from paying attention, from asking questions, and from trusting that even at this age, there's still the power to change something, even if it's small. George came by again that evening. He had a new bottle in his hand, something with triple action written in bold letters. He said he might give it a try. There was no argument, just a gentle suggestion to take a short walk after dinner. George chuckled, then sat down. For a while, there was just the sound of birds and the soft light of early evening. It used to seem like growing older meant shrinking, less energy, fewer choices, more limits. Like each birthday quietly closed another door. But now, it seemed more like peeling back layers. Finding what was still strong under all the habits, all the assumptions. It was learning how to live again with different rules. Rules that didn't demand perfection or youth, but patience, attention, and a bit of kindness toward oneself. Not trying to go back, but learning how to go forward, differently. Maybe slower, but also wiser. Maybe aging wasn't the end of discovery. Maybe it was a softer kind of beginning. One where progress was measured not in speed or success, but in courage and in care. Dancing on the beach like the man in the commercial might never happen, but walking around the block today without wincing, that was enough. And that night, sleep came easily, not from a pill, but from the quiet truth that something had changed, and that change had come from within.